Matt Lauer, who was fired from NBC after facing rape allegations from a former staffer, is now defending himself in an op-ed that was published in Mediaite. Now, I'm going to read relevant excerpts from that op-ed in just a moment, but first I think it's important to give you some background. The person who really jump-started this Me Too movement was Ronan Farrow, and the reporting that he did in regard to Harvey Weinstein and, all of the other men in positions of power who had allegedly abused their power by preying on female colleagues or maybe even female workers who were working under them. Now, Lauer was caught up in some of those allegations, and at the time, he confessed that he had an extramarital affair with one of the NBC staffers. That woman later revealed her identity and shared more details of her story to Ronan Farrow, which was then published in his book, Catch and Kill. Now, this week, there was a big story in the New York Times that was critical of Ronan Farrow's reporting. There was this allegation that Ronan Farrow would just simply publish some of these allegations by women, but would not do the proper fact-checking and look for corroborating information before publishing it. And I think that that is a problem. And look, to be, I guess, fair to Lauer, in his op-ed, you should read the whole thing. There are some instances where he raises some concerns about Ronan Farrow that I think are legitimate, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that Matt Lauer's account is the actual account. There are two sides to this story, so I'm going to give you as many facts as I can, and then you can judge for yourselves. So he writes in his op-ed, on October 9th, 2019, I was falsely accused of rape. The allegation came from Brooke Nevels, the same woman whose complaint resulted in my termination at NBC. It was made public as part of the promotional rollout for a new book by Ronan Farrow. This accusation was one of the worst and most consequential things to ever happen in my life. It was devastating for my family, and outrageously, it was used to sell books. So again, that's Matt Lauer's op-ed. This is his account. Now, he highlights a few instances of allegations that Brooke Nevels made, and how Ronan Farrow didn't follow up or do the proper fact checking in order to corroborate some of these claims. So here's an example. Ronan writes, when Brooke moved to a new job within the company, working as a producer for Peacock Productions, she reported it to one of her new bosses there. She felt they should know in case it became public and she became a liability. So look, I think Lauer's right here when he states that the right thing to do if you're going to report on this allegation is, hey, who was the boss that Brooke is talking about here? Let's have a conversation with her and see if there's any corroboration. And Lauer alleges that it didn't happen. And Lauer also alleges that he reached out to her former boss to see if this conversation actually took place. And he didn't speak to her former boss personally, but did speak to someone who works with her former boss. And according to Lauer, Brooke never said a single word about this being anything but a consensual affair. She said Brooke in no way conveyed the seriousness of what she now claims. There was never a mention of assault or rape. This superior also stated that Ronan Farrow never reached out to her to confirm the story that referenced her in the book. Ronan writes about a claim Brooke makes involving an alleged encounter in my dressing room, which was a floor above the Today Show studio. She says she came to my dressing room to get some photos, and as she leaned over my desk, she alleges I sexually assaulted her with my hands. He then writes, and this is according to what Ronan Farrow wrote in Catch and Kill, crying, she ran to the new guy she'd started seeing, a producer who was working in the control room that morning, and told him what had happened. So now Lauer is saying, like, okay, well, Ronan Farrow should have spoken to her now ex-boyfriend, who was a producer at NBC at the time. He alleges that Ronan Farrow didn't do that, and that Lauer reached out to him personally and had lengthy conversations with this guy. Look, the problem with that is okay, so now you're going around talking to ex-boyfriends. Like, you don't know how that relationship ended. Like, there are parts of his op-ed that I'm incredibly uncomfortable with, and I don't know what the truth is. I don't. No one does, right? What I do know, though, is that it is important to have corroborating evidence. As we've seen with the Tara Reade allegations, there was this obsession with corroborating evidence. There was this obsession with talking to people who know Tara Reade to ensure that she actually told them about the allegations at the time that they happened, right? And so I think that standard makes sense. Now, even though that standard was applied to Tara Reade, it wasn't good enough to persuade people. And then we had to have these long profiles talking to a number of people who wanted to slam Tara Reade for not paying her rent at one time in her life, which has nothing to do with sexual assault allegations. But anyway, I digress. Like, I do think it is important to be careful in what you choose to publish. But for Ronan Farrow's part, he denies these allegations made by Matt Lauer and by the New York Times. So here he is responding to it.
Matt Lauer came out really with guns blazing, responding to you. It made it very clear from his point of view that it was certainly consensual and she was very willing. This really is a he said, she said story, Ronan, at the end of the day, the allegations about Matt Lauer. How do you decide who is telling the truth here?
So I think one of the transformations of recent years is that we've come to understand that actually, I come at this from a legal background, you can corroborate claims of sexual violence. And Brooke Neville's claim has been found credible even by NBC News, which took the step of firing Matt Lauer, and same by me and by the fact checkers working on this. She describes an evening that matches up with a timeline given by others there. There were eyewitnesses to what happened before and after that moment. She described this event consistently over the years. And look, it's telling that NBC News paid her a seven-figure settlement to ensure that she can't talk about what the network knew about.
Yeah, and I really don't like this new, no, but I'm the real victim framing, right? Like, you're a man in a pretty extreme position of power at NBC, like you're a top host. And you shouldn't have relationships with people who work under you. You just shouldn't. It's a really, really bad idea. So at a minimum, that's something that he has confessed to. He's having an extramarital affair with one of his staffers. The rape allegation, I don't know. I don't know what the truth is. All I know is what's being reported by Ronan Farrow and what's now being said by Matt Lauer. But I think that there's like a very clear effort to completely delegitimize what we've, managed to do through the Me Too movement. I think the pendulum did swing a little too far in one direction, which was there were people who would just flat out say, believe women, like just believe women. And I never thought that was smart. I think it's important to take women seriously. I think it's important to hear them out and weigh whatever evidence there may be. But now, because some people have weaponized sexual assault allegations, unfortunately, I'm worried that the pendulum is going to swing back in a damaging direction.
Yeah. I don't want to go into all that. With the Matt, how should we know? How can we know? I don't know. I mean, look, it seems very weird to me that he is going around tracking down these individuals and having long conversations with them. That seems weird. And if the case is that Ronan Farrow is just, like picking up any rumor and running with it and not confirming it, that doesn't seem consistent with his history. I mean, if you want to say this specific thing should have been followed up, okay, fine, maybe it should. I'm not familiar with the details to that level. But it doesn't appear that he's just hunting for rumors and then throwing them up and then saying, you guys sort it out. It does seem more considered, more careful, more fact-checked than that.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, I mean, throughout this entire op-ed, Lauer accuses Ronan Farrow of having a bias against NBC. But Matt Lauer, in publishing this op-ed, clearly has a bone to pick with Ronan Farrow. He has his own biases, right? So it's incredible how Lauer makes this big deal about biases and reporting when you're using a conversation with an ex-boyfriend of the woman who's making these accusations against you as evidence of how you didn't do this, right? are you at all concerned about the possible bias the ex-boyfriend has? Yeah, and so yeah, I overall agree with you. I don't know. How can you know? But I don't like the characterization put forth by Matt Lauer. And look, NBC News basically did not want to publish Ronan Farrow's reporting on Harvey Weinstein, and they kept saying that he didn't have enough evidence. There wasn't enough corroborating evidence to publish it. But as we know, there was a ton of corroborating evidence, including audio recordings of Harvey Weinstein harassing actresses. So just you need to know the full context. This is the story. I have nothing else to say about it.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.